Hello, everyone. I'm going to give everyone just a quick minute to here to kind of log in and give everybody a chance to say hi. Good. Good to see everyone. As you're logging in, just wanted to let you know that I am Robin Jones. I'm director of the ABF Career Alliance, and this is the Net Effect. This is an opportunity for us to cast our nets on the right side. But before we get started today, I wanted to make sure that we cover a couple of housekeeping items. Facebook Live is really weird looking. Lane, if you're out there, would you mind checking it real quick? So everyone, it's good to see you. If you would take a moment and open up your Q&A for me. It's in your little toolbar. It says Q&A. Click on that icon. If you don't see it, then you may need to download and run Zoom. It's real important to have that on your laptop so you can participate in today's events, today's chat and conversation. So those of you that are out there, please type in your name and where you're from and say hello in the Q&A. Love to see that. Thank you, Janie. I appreciate you doing that. Anyone else? Jump right in. Appreciate the help there. Today, our chat session has been disabled. So our communication is through the Q&A. We've enabled everyone to be able to see that. So if you have a question, I'll be monitoring the Q&A as we move through our session today. Great. Hey, Gabe, nice to see you, sir. Corinne, good. Tara, hi, Lynn. Steve, good to see you on. Abby, nice. Thank you, Ann. Great. Looks like we're working here. So again, just one last thing. If you want to communicate, please communicate through the Q&A. If you have a question, be sure and type it into the Q&A, and I'm going to be monitoring that. So as you see me looking around, that's what I'm looking at. I'm watching and monitoring things as we move forward. So without further ado, I would love to welcome our special guest, Bob Woodard. Bob, welcome to today's Net Effect.
Well, thank you, Robin, and hello to you all from Texas. I'm Bob Woodard, and I'm going to take some time today and not only share my career with you, but also my journey in Christian Science. So, Robin, if we can get to the next slide, I think that would be great.
You bet. Bob is a senior executive consultant, all around incredible business and marketing professional. And one of the things we wanted Bob to do today is kind of share how he got started and some of those important steps that he took as he began his career. So Bob, as you started your career, tell us a little bit about how you got into these wonderful opportunities, these wonderful companies, kind of how you navigated.
Well, I will do that. I just would like to say up front that you see 3 great companies on this list, and I had the privilege to spend the first 30 years of my career with these companies. I'm blessed, I truly am, to have worked for each of these companies. It wasn't always a straight line. There were blips along the way, and I'm going to share some of those blips with you and how I met those challenges through Christian Science. So that was the first 30. The last 17 have been really being a business consultant with my own business. So, Robin, I'm going to answer that question. I do get asked that often in mentoring college students. They say, well, how did you get your start in marketing? Well, there's one word: internships.
Yep. Powerful word, Bob.
It is a powerful word, and I think it's sometimes overlooked by people who say, oh, I don't want an internship, I want a full-time job or whatever. But here's what happened. When I was a freshman at St. Lawrence University getting my bachelor's degree in English, I knew I had an interest in marketing, and a retired executive from a New York-based advertising agency, friend of the family, um, referred me to the HR department of that agency. So I went down for an interview, and they said, sure, we can hire you. We can hire you as an intern for a summer job. I said, great, what would I do? Well, you'd start in the mailroom as an office boy, delivering mail. And believe it or not, I did that for an entire summer. And for
there's not much glamour in that, is there, Bob?
Well, there wasn't too much glamour. I got a chance to meet all the executives because for those of you before email, that's the way inter-office mail was delivered, through the mailroom. So I got a chance to meet everybody. That was a good thing. And by the way, that's an important element of this. So at the end of my internship with General Foods, they said, we'd like to hire you when you graduate from Syracuse with your MBA. So I went off to Syracuse pretty relieved. I said, wow, I've already got an offer and haven't started graduate school yet. So when I got there, I started thinking about, yeah, this is marketing, but I really want to see what the brand side is all about. I know the account side on the agency business. So lo and behold, I'm walking down the corridor at Syracuse, and there up on the bulletin board is that flyer that said, Steve Price, product manager from the Maxwell House division of General Foods, is coming to Syracuse to give a talk on product management. I'll never forget it. So what did I do? I wrote him. I wrote him a letter, got a response. We then met when he came up. I got introduced to General Foods, went down for an interview, went on for an internship for the summer. At that end of the internship, they said, look, when you get out of the service, which I had a 2-year commitment, come back, we've got a job for you. Oh, as a matter of fact, don't wait till you go into the service. Start with us next June. And that was the beginning of my career. I started with General Foods, 6 weeks later, got my orders, went away for 2 years, came back, and they held my position. So what's the lesson? Internships. And don't worry about the first one that you have. It won't be the last, or it doesn't have to be the last. So let's go on to the journey.
Yeah, tell us about why you put First Healing up here, Bob, and why is that significant in your career?
Well, it was my first healing in Christian Science, and I'm sure, as most of you know, you remember your first healing. And this was a physical healing that was preventing me from doing my, quote, part-time job. Because while I was at General Foods, I was paid to be a ski patroller. That means I was a professional ski patroller at a New England area. And I dislocated my shoulder and I couldn't do my job. It was early in my career. I came to Christian Science through marriage. So I was a pretty novice Christian Scientist, let's say. So I went to a doctor, and the doctor gave me a diagnosis, said, yes, you have a chronic dislocated shoulder. And by the way, we can do surgery on that. I've got a place in my room tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I said, and what will happen with my movement? He said, well, you'll be able to lift your arm up here. And I said, nope, that's not good enough. I play tennis with that arm. Long story short, I walked away politely. I called a Christian Science practitioner, who was my first time. 2 weeks later, I was completely healed. And I've never had a problem with my shoulder since, skiing, tennis, or any other thing. So it was a hallmark healing for me, and an important one, because it got me on the road to being a more serious student of Christian Science. So here I went off to Avon, and I now was, wow, a manager and in charge of people. And I'll never forget the first day on the job, the subordinate and I got into a little confrontation. You might call it a disagreement. So much so, we left the office that day. I was totally unhinged. I went home and I was distraught. How am I going to deal with this? And believe it or not, that evening, I was invited to my first Christian Science lecture.
Oh, wow.
And I went to the lecture, and the subject of, I can't remember the lecturer, but the subject of the lecture was the spiritualization of man. And boy, did I need that. I needed it for myself, and I needed it for seeing this subordinate. And what I learned and took away from that was, wow, yeah, Christian Science were made in the image and likeness of God, and isn't that good for me? But wait a minute. It's also good and true about my subordinate. And I came to that point at 9 o'clock that evening. It's got an important point. I felt relieved. I went home that night, slept, got up the next morning. Who was waiting for me to come into my office when I got there? The subordinate that I'd had the disagreement with.
Of course.
He said, I went home, I was distraught, upset, talked to my wife, whatever. And at about 9 o'clock at night, it occurred to me that I needed to look at this differently. And I needed to be more mature about this. And I needed to, in this case, apologize for my behavior and get on the right track with my new boss. That healed that relationship forever. And we went on to work on several different projects together, and it was phenomenal.
Well, that is an amazing thing. The same exact time. Obviously that's not coincidence, right?
It isn't, as I've learned in my study of Christian Science.
Yeah.
So here I am, sent to Avon. I was selected by Avon to go to Brazil. There were 6 of us, to go to different Latin America countries. I didn't know a word of Portuguese when I set foot there, and my wife and family went with me. So there I am. Of course, I knew the words in English. I didn't know the words in Portuguese. I was trying to figure this out. I was getting ready for my first presentation. Mm-hmm. I was full of fear and doubt. I was just beside myself. How can I get through this? And I'll never forget the night before, my wife handed me an article from a Christian Science journal. I have the article here. It's not, I've kept it with me. And it was an article about a woman who had a stuttering problem growing up, and she was very shy and was at the same moment that I was about making a presentation, when she realized that it wasn't about impressing the audience or anybody. It was about expressing God. That's all you're doing in a presentation. That, to me, just lifted that false sense of responsibility off my shoulders. I got through the presentation, with at least I was pleased. Went on to have a 3.5-year career at Avon, Brazil, was promoted there. It just led to a wonderful relationship. But that lesson of expressing God helped me. I went on to make presentations later on in my career, and I can say, frankly and truthfully, I've been in live presentations with people, with audiences of up to 10,000 people.
Wow.
I've relied on this truth to calm my nerves before every presentation, and it works.
That's remarkable. Well, as we move forward in your journey, you have a no way out financial crisis. I think that might resonate with some folks.
Well, it does. My wife uses this as an example in her boarded lecture activity. It was a hallmark healing for me. Here it was, and I'll do it, the cliff notes here. It was graduation day for our son, high school. And I'm sitting there with no money, no savings, no income, and no job. I just made a decision to stop the business that I had started up 6 months ago. The product supplier went out of business. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any product to sell for my sales force. And I was in trouble. I was fearful. I had unpaid bills. I was fearful I was going to have to declare bankruptcy. I was at wit's end. So what did I do? I went home and called a Christian Science practitioner. And I will never forget the conversation because he told me three things. He said, first of all, God is your employer, and that relationship is intact. That stunned me and woke me up. And of course, relieved a little of that false responsibility. The second thing he told me was, and he read to me from Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 7, which has become my favorite text in the Bible. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Well, boy, that took more false responsibility off my shoulders because I could put my trust and get myself out of the way, which was very important. The third thing he said to me was, you only have to worry about the decisions you need to make right now. Right now. Don't concern yourself with decisions you've made in the past because that time's come and gone. You can't do anything about it. So forget about it. And don't worry about decisions that you need to make any time in the future because that time hasn't come yet. Well, that allowed me to focus and do exactly what I needed to do. And this is what happened. On Monday, I went to see a lawyer who told me I didn't have to declare bankruptcy. On Tuesday, I received a telephone call from a friend, a fellow Christian Scientist, who said, why don't you call so-and-so, the president of a well-known international company, because he's just got there and might need some people with your experience. On Wednesday, I made the call, and believe it or not, he was in the office, and we talked for 45 minutes. And at the end of the conversation, he said, I'm going to have the division president call you tomorrow. The phone rang at 9 o'clock in the morning. We had an interview. I went down for a live interview. Within a week, I had an offer and was fully employed. So within 2 weeks of shutting down my business, I was fully employed. Obviously, I'm so grateful for that occurrence. I mean, I went on, I paid off all my unpaid bills, and I never had to borrow a penny for my children's college education. Our son went to UNC and our daughter went on to Vanderbilt. I'm so grateful for that, but I'm most grateful for the conversation I had with my practitioner.
I mean, that must have really shocked you when he said, don't focus on tomorrow.
The advice he gave me has resonated with me and continues to. It's life-changing because when I get upset, and I know it, I'm concerned and worried about what I'm going to do. Wrong place. Wrong place. Don't worry about what you're going to do in the future. Just worry about what you need to do right now. And you'll be led. If you trust in God and listen, you'll get the answer you need.
I think that's where some folks, have a challenge. It's like, how do I know that's God? How do I know that that message that's coming in is that message I need to focus on right now? How did you come to terms with something like that?
Well, I pray. And when I pray, I turn it all over to God. because this is all about God, not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about my problem. God doesn't know anything about my problems. God knows me as his perfect image and likeness. So if I truly listen and get quiet, I'm going to hear what I need to do. And I can reflect back at that time, praying that Monday or that Sunday, I should say, after talking with that Christian Science practitioner, what am I going to do? And every day I got an answer. The first day was, go call that lawyer.
Mm-hmm,
Go see him.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Don't worry about anything else. That's the thing you need to take care of. And he told me, go sell everything you can. So I enlisted my staff and my wife and my daughter, and they started working while I was praying. And what happened? The phone rang and you heard the rest. And
Right.
day by day, I got the answer I need. And I do that today. If I'm going into a meeting, I get quiet. I listen. And when I mentor people, it's not about me. It's about them. So what do? I listen, and God will give me what I need to say. And it's worked for me ever since.
Well, you've obviously had great success with that, but you're not afraid to talk about some of the challenges along the way.
Well, I've had them, and these are 3 of them. I probably could add a whole PowerPoint presentation with more, but we'll focus on 3. As I mentioned earlier, I came to Christian Science through marriage. I drank all the way through college, into my first job at General Foods, because it was the thing to do and I enjoyed it, and it loosened me up a little, and boy, I was living the life, just swimming along. And there was a turning point that came. I woke because I was, my normal consumption, my usual consumption, and this surprises me even to this day. I'd have 2 or 3 glasses of wine before dinner, and after dinner, I'd have 3 or 4 beers, then go to bed. And that was just Monday through Thursday. And of course, as it got closer to the weekend, I could amp it up a little. But I woke up one morning, literally woke up, and figuratively woke up. I woke up with this statement: this isn't doing you any good. This drinking isn't doing you any good. And I translated that into, and this is God speaking to me, I translated that good, right to God. God is not looking over me as a heavy social drinker. He's looking at me as his image and likeness. And there's nothing good about this heavy social drinking. It's not good for me. And it's not coming from God. And with that, all desire for alcohol left me that day and has never returned.
What strikes me about that, Bob, is that in the midst of what you were doing and how you were going about your daily life, God continued to communicate. And you weren't anywhere, you weren't separated, you weren't without that communication, but that communication was still present in the moment.
Yes. And it is present in the moment. That's the Christ coming to us. That's always there. We just need to tune into it and see it. And, I'm not going to be a hypocrite about social drinking because, what do you do when you're in an occasion? and even today, if I'm in a special occasion and it's someone's wedding and somebody shoves a glass of champagne in my hand or a glass of wine or whatever it is, I'll be polite. I'll take a sip and then I'll put it down. I'm going to toast with somebody and be socially engaged, but I don't drink. And it's the wonderful thing about it is, for those of you who might be in this same situation, your friends and family who know that you don't drink are the only ones that matter. I'm going to say that again. Your friends and family, and your friends don't all have to be Christian Scientists, but if they know that you've stopped drinking and don't drink, they're not going to bother you. And today, there are two trends going on to help you. One, the NA beverage business is booming. Non-alcoholic beers and non-alcoholic spirits, and it's just booming. So there are things that you can drink and be socially acceptable, but it doesn't have to be alcohol.
Well, in that time, you also talk about finding purpose.
Yeah, this is really funny because I say funny. I found myself in my mid-30s asking myself this question, which I hope, well, you're going to hear, so I hope you answer it now, or I hope you've already answered it. But the question that came to me, and again, this is God speaking, is I woke up one morning saying, why am I here? Mm. And it took me until I was 35 or 36 to ask myself that question. I'm astonished when I look back and say, I didn't think about it earlier. No, I was too busy having a good time and being distracted. So here's the answer that came. To reflect God. Just those three words. To reflect God. That's what God told me is my purpose. And I can say from that point on, I've done my best to follow that advice. And it's been a steering point for me in my journey. I'm truly grateful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, the unemployment, how did that come about?
Well, unemployment, these are the blips along the road. And how are we doing on time?
We're doing good. Yep.
Doing
We're moving
good.
along. Yep.
Because I've got a couple of instances here. One happened at the end of my Avon career. I spent 10 years with Avon. Avon went through a recession, a corporate recession. They went through a downsizing. My position was eliminated. I was given all of the wonderful severance package, and it was very gracious. And of course, I had an outplacement office with a place to go. And that's when I had to start my first job search. So I remember it well because I really didn't know how to do it. I didn't know about networking. I didn't know about all these things. But I do want to say this about that time. It was a special time. I was in New York City. It was a special time for me to go to the reading room nearby, to be a place where I could study the lesson and pray and get away from the distractions of being in an office. And for me, it was invaluable. And I know when I tell this story to others, that resonates well with them and, of course, reading room librarians all over the world. So thank you, reading room. You came at a good time. Let me touch the other one. This is amazing. I retired early from Tupperware and was introduced to, I didn't want to stop working, but I took the early retirement package and got introduced to someone in Texas, and I went to work for them. I started up a division that became the most profitable division of that company.
Mm.
And everything was going along well. My wife had moved to Texas. We were building a house. My boss, the owner of the company, said, "Why don't you and Patty come out to dinner with my wife and I, and we're going to celebrate and whatever. I just want to express my gratitude. You're doing a great job. We looking forward to a long-term relationship, blah, 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 blah." That was Saturday night. On Monday morning, I walked into the office, went into a business meeting, and got tapped on the shoulder and said, "Go to so-and-so's office." I went to the office and they said, "We don't need you anymore." The owner of the company had just turned my division over to his 20-something son. And his son said, "Thank you very much for teaching me everything, but we don't need you anymore." Whew. So there I am in Texas, drove home, walk into our corporate housing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, say, "Patty, I'm home." She's a Christian Science practitioner, so she had her practice going. "Honey, I'm home. What am I going to do?" Well, this is what came. My wife said, "Why don't you call that friend at church? He's been trying to have lunch with you for the year you've been here." So I did. I made the call. I should interject here, by the way. No job, and we have 4 months to close on our house. And of course, I had to get a mortgage with no job. Not going to happen. So she said, "Why don't you call so-and-so?" I called him on Monday. This sounds like my other journey. Called him on Monday. I'm sorry, I called him on Tuesday because Monday I got fired. Tuesday I called him. Wednesday he invited me to dinner to meet his father-in-law. Thursday he asked me to do a proposal. Friday he asked to introduce me to the president of the company down in Austin that I'd be working with. And that very day, he gave me a signed contract for a consulting assignment that, believe it or not, lasted 17 months.
Wow.
I don't know for anybody who's ever been a consultant, but that's a long time for a consultant project. I'm happy to get a month, but it was fabulous and just propelled me into consulting. And I've been doing that for the last 17 years.
Well, you obviously had a wide berth and worked with some wonderful companies and organizations, and you thought it would be fun for people to see how you view character traits and why they're important, and how role models have, exemplified some of those things.
Well, I'd like to touch on that. I won't go through all of these. You can see the list. I'm going to touch on 2 of them, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of role models I've had. Positivity. Positive attitude is what that means. Having a positive attitude. And I had a boss once who said this. He said, my first criteria in hiring someone is to be sure they have a positive attitude. And I can find that out in an interview. And if I detect any degree of negativity, I don't care what their background is, I don't care what experience they've had or whatever, or where they went to school, they're not coming to my organization because I don't want negative thought in my organization. Great. So let your light shine out there to all of you. Don't forget that. The other thing I'll share here is eager to learn and share with others. The people I've worked with have always been eager to learn and listen. because listening is learning. And boy, that's an important trait. And the ability to share with others, to be able to give back, is an important trait. And it's invaluable in a career. Let me touch upon two of the role models that have been instrumental in my career. Here's the interesting point. Both of them were Christian Scientists, and both of them I never knew until after I'd worked for them. I never knew they were Christian Scientists. The first one was at General Foods. The head of the Maxwell House brand that I worked for was a Christian Scientist, and I didn't know that until 40 years later when I walked into a branch church in Connecticut where my daughter was living at the time with her family, and there he was. It was just incredible. We had a great conversation, caught up obviously on 40 years, and I've seen him several times since. The second one was the one who hired me at Avon. And
I mean, it's just remarkable.
I didn't know it.
Wow.
And I didn't know it until he selected me to go to Brazil.
Huh.
So he came down to Brazil and invited a group of executives, small group of executives and their spouses. And my wife and I had a chance to go to dinner with him.
Mm-hmm.
He sat next to my wife and I sat on the other side of him. And would you believe, in the context of the conversation, he turned to my wife and said, "Well, what do you do?" And she turned to him and said, "Well, you probably don't know what I'm going to say, but or anything about this, but I'm a Christian Science practitioner." And his mouth dropped open.
I bet it did.
It dropped open, and he turned to me and her, back and forth. He said, "Now I know why you are the way you are." It blew me away. Absolute blew me away.
I bet it
Greatest
did.
compliment I could have had.
Yeah.
And I learned that he was, raised by an aunt who was a Christian Scientist. Who knew?
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew?
Well, I know.
The lesson in that is you never know.
Yeah. No,
With whoever you work for or wherever you go, they are there. We are there, right?
Right.
All Christian Scientists are there.
Well, I kind of like this guy on the screen here now. I'm kind of like some of the character traits that he's exemplifying.
Yeah.
And I know that the landscape for you now is plenty busy, as we can see with his big giant smile on your face right there. But in all seriousness, I mean, I know you're really busy, and you kind of have a whole new career with some of the things that you're doing now.
Well, I'm grateful again, and yes, I do. I've shifted into nonprofit activities. I'll say one thing about the fishing.
Yep.
Now I have time to fish. That was taken about a year ago.
Yeah.
And now I have the opportunity to teach my grandkids how to fish. So
how fun.
It's awesome.
How fun.
So back to nonprofit activities. I'll mention three here that I'm involved in. I'm a board member of a foundation here in Texas that supports Christian Scientists, and it's a privilege to do that. We help Christian Scientists who are going to camp, education, and any Christian Scientist who needs general assistance or, in fact, Christian Science nursing care.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to the second nonprofit activity that I'm involved in. I'm a program coordinator for a new organization that's in a startup form called Communities of Christian Caring. You're going to hear more about this in the future, and keep your eyes and ears close to the ground on this. This is an opportunity to engage people who are trying to help others, and to help others help others. And it's a wonderful mission-based opportunity based on Jesus' commandment to love thy neighbor, to go out and care for people who are Christian Scientists in need.
Mhm.
So we're busy getting that off to the ground right now. And as I said, you'll hear more about that, Robin, in the future.
Great.
And the third one, of course, is being a mentor. I love being a mentor. I'm a mentor for college students, whether they're Christian Scientists or not. But I've met some wonderful people through the ABF Career Alliance program. So I've met some wonderful, and I hope some of you are listening out there, some bright, young, inspired youth who are ready to get on with their career. And I would, of course, will help them in any way I can. So it's a privilege to be in that business.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to serve, your willingness to help with the Career Alliance and be a regional ambassador for the Albert Baker Fund. It is rewarding work, but we could not do what we do without people like you who are willing to step up and help our students. So it's an honor for us to have you.
Well,
And
thank you.
yeah,
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
yeah, and then
Can't forget this.
yeah, I can't forget this one. This is another one of your dear loves, and I've had the good pleasure to actually meet some of the, or one of the guys that Bob has worked with from the Prentice. We had lunch together at one time
That's
down in
right.
Dallas, right? Tell
That's
us a little
right.
bit about your work here, Bob.
Well, this is one of those life-changing experiences to be a volunteer chaplain in prison. I was invited one day to go to the largest county jail in Dallas, Texas, invited by another Christian Scientist. Come along with me and let's go read the lesson and meet these men in prison. And I've gone on to minister in the largest state prison in the state of Texas, Cofield. With my wife and I both go there. And it's an incredible experience. And I will say this, I faced two challenges came to mind when someone asked me about being a volunteer chaplain. And one was fear of going into prison. I've never been in prison. I didn't know what it was going to be like. And I don't know what it's going to be like behind bars. Am I going to be safe? The other one was overcoming a bias of relating to people not in my own socioeconomic class, people who don't look like me, people who may be of color, of different religion. I was faced with overcoming any bias I had and had a wonderful healing, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. Let me cover the first fear. At the initiation I went to at Cofield, the warden said this to me. He said, being in prison as a volunteer chaplain is one of the safest places on earth you can be. Why? There are no guns, there are no knives, there are no cars, no traffic. But this important point, if anything should happen while you're in prison, these men who you're ministering to have a high degree of respect for what you're doing. They relish the time that they have with you. They respect you, and they will cover your back. They'll cover you over if you get into a situation and keep you from harm's way. So don't concern yourself about being safe, or being unsafe, I should say, in prison. So let me cover the other one. When I went in, there I am looking at people that look different than me and trying to say, God, tell me how I can relate to them. Tell me how I can overcome any fear that I have or any bias I have. And this is what I heard. And this is what I found to be true in talking with these individuals. They're no different than I am. They're no different than you or me. God made us in his image and likeness. Us made me and these inmates. Now, they may be wearing different clothes than I am, but the light still shines in their eyes. And when they feel or recognize a truth in Christian Science that helps them, you will see the impact it has in their life. And it's phenomenal. All self-consciousness or any bias I've had disappeared within a couple of visits going to meet these men. And I have to say, and Robin mentioned it, some of these people have become very good friends, not just the inmates in prison, but some of those who have gotten out and have chosen Dallas-Fort Worth as a place to relocate. And we welcome them in our prison, We welcome them in our branch church. And as a matter of fact, we have one who's become a member of our branch church, and another who's put in an application. And this whole prison ministry has opened up a mentorship that has gone beyond, as I said, just people in prison. It's led to mentoring former homeless people, and it's just opened up a whole new avenue of giving back that I'm involved in and getting so much. And this is the final thing I'll say. When you do this, you recognize that you get so much more than you give. It's a blessing to do this business.
And it's remarkable. And, just the idea of being able to, in your own, it's kind of a blessing both ways, seeing that growth in yourself as a result of blessing others. I mean, I love it. And I know that you're probably, Bob's a lot like me. We all married up, so I love that you're the CFO in this wonderful ministry.
Yeah, I'm the CZO and the CFO. I'm both. This is my wife, Patty. She's a Christian Science practitioner and on the board of lectureship. And of course, with all of the COVID situation, all of the in-person lectures have segued into Zoom lectures. So I'm becoming an expert in Zoom. I'm not an expert yet, but so I'm her chief Zoom officer and have a great deal of fun helping and supporting her.
Well, as we begin to wrap this up, Bob, you had a few things to share with us before we get into our final Q&A.
Great. Well, the first is a career path is never a straight line, and I think I've related that to you. Don't worry about it. It's you're going to hit blips along the way, but I can honestly say if it weren't for Christian Science, I wouldn't be where I am today. I'd say the second thing is trust in the Lord and put God first. Get yourself out of the way and listen, and you'll be given what you need. And the last thing is when you see people, see them as they are. See them as Christ Jesus would see them. I love what Mary Baker Eddy has to say about Christ Jesus seeing the real man. For sitting mortal man only appears to mortals. So use your spiritual sense. Use what you know in Christian Science to not only help you, but the people you know around you. And it'll take you to places you never expected to go.
Well, I always ask every one of my guests this question. I mean, do you recommend having conversations with many different types of professionals, and particularly outside your lane? And then one of our folks that registered and participating in the webinar, Anne, asked this question. She says, describe ways to reach out, and what are good networking opportunities. So, and I wanted to remind you, Bob, to remember what we talked about 5 minutes ago before we kind of started this.
Well, Yes. Is this where you want me to talk about networking and the strategies,
Yep.
the things that
Yeah,
I found
please.
helpful? This is what I found helpful. And then I'll talk about how to put them in action.
Great.
The first thing, tips on networking. First of all, when you're looking for a job, the first thing to do is make a list, make 2 lists. Make one list of all the people you know, and make one list of the organizations that you'd like to work for. With those 2 lists, you will be, you'll have what you need to talk to anybody. So what's the importance of making that list? Well, you want to make a list of everyone you know, and you want to go to your friends and family and have them make a list of the people they know and put them on your list. Because these are all people, quote, in your network. And you want to add to your network every day. Every day you meet someone, you want to add them to your list. When you do that, by the way, your networking is never going to end until you get an offer. The second list is, who do you want to work for? It's an important one because it focuses you on what's in your scope. What would you like to do? But here's how it can work. You can take somebody on the list and be referred to somebody you don't know. So you call them up and you say, Robin Jones suggested that I contact you. Or if Robin Jones is really doing his job, he's going to say in your conversation with him, let me call so-and-so, or let me send him a virtual introduction so that when you can contact him through that way. So I contact Mike Wright. Okay, Mike Wright is the third person that I don't know, third party person. Well, Robin Jones suggested I contact you, and because I'm working on my career path and I need your advice on my career. I want to go into marketing, but I'm not quite sure how to get there. Do you have any advice you could share? Or do you know any people I should speak with? Those are the 2 important questions to ask. Do you have any advice you can share, or do you know anybody I should talk with? And what he's going to do, most likely, or she, is going to turn around and say, well, Bob, what do you want to do? And instead of sitting there fumbling around saying, oh, well, that's a good question. Let me think about that. You could say, you know what, I'm looking at a career in marketing, and here's the list of the companies that I'd like to work for. Great, that's good. Let me see the list. I see you got Coca-Cola on there. Gee, I don't know anybody at Coke, but I do know somebody at Pepsi, and they're not on your list. Hey, that's okay. I'd love to meet somebody at Pepsi. That's how that document can work. And I've seen it work effectively without a resume. You just carry that around with you. What do you want to do? I'd love to have a conversation of what I'd like to do, but I'd like your advice. Those are the key points in networking. And I think the last thing I'll say is you never stop until you get an offer. And some people never stop until they get 2 offers or 3 offers.
Well, and I would say don't stop until you exercise all your opportunities in the Career Alliance with our career allies like Bob here.
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
So if you would like to make career connections, go to abfcareeralliance.org and go the job seeker route, and you'll find your way in to seeing folks just like Bob who are willing to help become mentors and shepherd folks along the way. Bob put up a few resources here for us. The Consumer Packaging Goods and the Direct Selling Network. When you get the recording, you can copy and paste this link from the
Yeah, I could
email.
just say, yeah, just a couple of things about that link is that's a McKinsey report on consumer packaged goods today.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great article. It'll give you some insights about what's going on in consumer packaged goods today. And the direct selling is a direct selling association website that has all sorts of information on companies like Avon and Tupperware, et cetera.
So I appreciate that. And then we have posted some new jobs this week on the Career Alliance job board. Again, it's abfcareeralliance.org, and go the job seeker route and you'll find these jobs. You can do it a quick keyword search and up will pop the published jobs that we have on the job board today. So I just wanted to mention that. And then Bob wanted to mention some resources here for nonprofit work. Bob, if you can just briefly talk about these for a moment.
Yes, for those of you who might be interested in exploring what being a volunteer chaplain is all about, I would suggest that you, or urge you, to find somebody in your local branch church who's involved in prison ministry. And if there aren't any, go to a branch church that does have it. Seek out a branch church that's somewhere near you or an hour's drive or whatever that does have a prison ministry, and go talk to someone. And I guarantee you'll get an invitation and take it and see what it's like. And I've been able to introduce prison ministry to people of all ages, including recent graduates of college. So go do it. It's a life-changing experience. The other resource is an invitation to a meeting that we're actually going to have October 17th. It's going to be a webinar, actually annual meeting of the Christian Science institutional work in Texas. It's their annual meeting, and there are a couple of things that'll happen. You'll hear from real live chaplains on what they do and the experience they have, but you'll also hear from a fellow called Bobby Radke, who's a former inmate who's now a prison chaplain. It's a wonderful story. He's got a great story to tell. Tune in. It's going to be worth your while.
Well, we appreciate that. I've launched our poll, and if you all would take a moment to please complete that, we'd really appreciate it. We love hearing your feedback, and as we're moving through our episodes here, this is number 26. We're going to finish up with a few questions, but we're bumping up against the hour. One of the questions Betsy has is, can you give a tip on doing what you need to do in the moment when you're being urged to plan? That's a great question, by the way. So what do you do in the moment when you're being urged to plan?
When you're being urged to plan.
Yep.
Well, I think the most important thing is to be quiet and listen. And you want to understand what the goal is. What is the goal for this plan? And understand what that is so that you can think about that and then put steps in place to reach that goal. Planning is always, in my experience, a way to get from point A to point Z or C or D. And it's a process. So don't get overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, all the details that I've got to worry about or the steps I need to take. I go back to what I learned when I had to shut down my business and pray to learn about what I was going to do next. Take it step by step. And, if you're urged to plan, that's fine. You can push back sometimes, and sometimes that's the right solution. Can you give me another day? when do you have to have this? I'd like to get it done, but I'm doing this and I could use an extra couple of days. You can buy yourself some time sometimes, or you can say to the person who's urging you, I'd really like to do that, but I think I can only do a superficial job between now and then, or I can only do this part. So give yourself some slack. Don't try to put all that false responsibility on your shoulders.
Another question is regarding the communities of Christian Science caring that we talked about. Is there a link for that is there a link for that organization yet, like a website?
You know, there isn't. And I just bought the URL on that. So there will be. It's going to be cscocc.org.
Say that one more time.
We haven't even got a web page up. But,
okay.
Robin, I think when I do get it, I'll certainly put it on the Alliance, because it's going to be part of our ministry really going forward. This is big. This is trying to care for Christian Scientists where there may not be Christian Science nurses or Christian Science facilities in place. And we've got a process and a way to help others help others.
Great.
So stay tuned.
Steve has another question relating to networking. She asked the question, do you recommend a social medium like LinkedIn? Sometimes it seems to be too broad and maybe too scattered an approach. I
absolutely would endorse LinkedIn. And I do that on a couple of different levels. One is you're going to build your own network using LinkedIn. And that can be invaluable to you going forward, because that's part of the people on your list that I spoke about earlier. The second thing is you can use LinkedIn as a search engine to find people. And it's an extremely effective search engine. So much so that you can actually find them on Google to get to their LinkedIn profile. But I have been reunited with people that I haven't seen or in 20 to 25 years, because we're both now on LinkedIn. And of course, 25 years ago, we didn't have computers, or didn't have the internet, or didn't have LinkedIn. So absolutely, use LinkedIn.
So another question is that Corinne has about the October 17th. I put the link in the email that goes out tomorrow afternoon to everyone that has the recording of our webinar today. So that'll be in there. So if you're interested in finding that, I'll make sure that everyone gets it. And then finally, Alina has the question, where do you pro patrol?
Oh, where did I pro patrol?
Yeah.
At Bromley Ski Area in Peru, Vermont.
Oh, fun.
That's where I grew up. My dad retired to Vermont, and when I was at St. Lawrence University, I ran the ski patrol there, and Bromley found out about it, and they said, come ski for us. And they paid me to ski throughout my graduate school all the way through the time post-Brazil. So my kids had a chance to ski, and my wife did. And I'd love to know where this person skied.
Yeah, Lena, I'm not sure what if you answer it in Q&A, then we'll see it. But
well, I can be happy to get in touch with me.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm still in touch with the Bromley Ski Patrol.
Oh,
and
fun.
I still ski every year. So
how neat. Well, we're going to have to close. We've gone over, but there were great questions, and I didn't want to stop it, because what a wonderful, wonderful session. What a wonderful webinar. What a wonderful net effect, Bob. You've been just terrific. I appreciate those who've answered the poll. If you haven't, be sure and do. I'll leave it up for a few more minutes. And, you know, the Albert Baker Fund is a wonderful organization. And if you go to albertbakerfund.org, you'll find the many different programs that we support. Lots of different things from Christian Science nursing to TMC youth internships. Wonderful, wonderful programming here, and incredibly awesome staff that are dedicated to serving the cause of Christian Science and helping those in our community. Again, it's the albertbakerfund.org. And you can request a connection, this wonderful young man right here in front of us, by going to the ABF Career Alliance, and you'll see on each one of the tracks, the Job Seeker Student and Career Ally, the Twitter feed on the right-hand side. And all you have to do is click on this little link right here, and it'll take you to our jobs board, and we'll help you get connected to Bob. We have lots of different resources available, from our incredible Life Launch course to the Net Effect episodes in the past Net Effect episodes. And we want to say to all of you, thank you. Our students say thank you for this supporting the Brotherly Love campaign during this unprecedented time of change and upheaval. And please follow us on our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, the ABF Career Alliance. I think today, Bob, you've helped us cast the net on the right side today and bring forth abundance. And we so appreciate your time, your willingness to work with us and be a part of what we're doing here.
Well, thank you, Robin. It's my pleasure and my privilege to be in this audience. So thank you so much.
Well, you're terrific, man, and we just so appreciate you've been a great guest, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Hopefully, we'll get down to Dallas before long, and we can go break some bread down in Deep Ellum.
Now, Deep Ellum, I look forward to that, Robin.
Yeah. All right, Bob. Thanks. Have a great weekend, and thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next week. We have a wonderful guest, Holly Valentine's, another career ally, who is an aquarist up on the East Coast. I've known Holly for a long time. She's wonderful, wonderful person. Can't wait to visit with her. So see y'all and have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome. Is it just us?
No.
Yep.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.